that a little bit better because let's see. Yes, we're back live here at Albert Park. A little bit of apologies for that, as I seem to have hitched some technical errors. My name is Yasin Thomas, and I'll be taking you through the opening round of the WR Season 21 Console Tier 4. You've joined us at the best time of qualifying, right at the death. We're on board with Swifty as Callum puts it on provisional pole with a 15 dead. First time we've seen one of those. Will someone creep into the 14s right to the very end of this session, or will that 15 flat be enough? On board with Swifty, who hit the fast left right of 11 and 12. Oh, and it seems to have, he seemed to have invalidated, and he's, well, crashed in frustration, I believe, as Enzo seems to have run out of ERS, and we seem to be flicking through some of the drivers here on board, and all who seem to have had pulled back up moments ago. Is he going to claim it back? He will. We've swooped into the 1 minute 14s with a 1 minute 14.7 from the McLaren driver, and that should be good enough for pole. I can't see the Williams getting anything, and it doesn't seem to be on a particularly quick lap. So that is the end of qualifying. Quite a frantic end to the session, and well, it seems to be that we've got off to a frantic start here in Albert Park. So let me quickly run you through the grid. We've only got 30 seconds. Ollie puts it on pole with a 14.7, 2.5 tenths clear the rest of the field. Callum joins him on the front row before you've got David Svat in his kick, with Willow showing a good performance for McLaren there were two cars in the top four. Sempi 5, Enzo 33. Max in the Alpines leading his teammate by 1,000th of a second. Then you've got Diore Jordi, Swifty, and Vando Rundy rounding out the top 10 in this Williams. So we are ready to go here in Albert Park. So we are just getting ready. If anyone wants to leave a quick race prediction for how this is going to go, then, well, feel free. And it should be an exciting one as we do the traditional thing on the spectator camera of just waiting in and loading in for the drivers ahead of the start race. You get a lovely scenic view of the garages here at Albert Park, of course. Formerly in real life, the garages would be in reverse order, but on this game, it seems to be in kind of team classification following the constructors. But it should be an exciting race as we're just gearing up and being ready to go here in Australia. So thank you all who have tuned in. Apologies for the delay, which meant that I'm not sure what really happened. I couldn't really pick out the stream to kind of share it round to get people to join, but it seemed to be just hidden away on the WRU. WRU, that's a rugby organisation. The WOR YouTube page. So feel free to like and subscribe. You can also follow me on social media if you want. That would be an added bonus. And I'm on all the usual platforms. And hopefully we are set for a good race. Conditions seem dry as we're waiting for people to ready up, as we're about to get going. Again, an excellent lap from Ollie in his McLaren. McLaren really showing a good showing in that qualifying session with some frightening pace in the early stages. The only driver in the 14s, and then Willow putting his car on the second row of the grid in P4, meaning it's a good start to the season for them. And again, we were just waiting for the start of this race. Again, apologies for the hitch in technical faults that I kind of experienced on the stream at the beginning. I thought I was live, and well, turns out I was and wasn't at the same time, which made things interesting. And hopefully it will all go to plan for this race anyway. So yeah, as we wait, feel free to join and well, leave your predictions if you want. I'm sure that will be a source of excitement to look back to later on. And we're just going to get ready now for the start of this race. And good to see everyone tuning in live on stream. I hate to say it, I'm not the most technical when it comes to technology, and I've been missing out on a couple of pieces of equipment that I might have to buy over the next couple of weeks ago to keep up the standard of graphic and high end tech. But we're ready to go now as the 5 red lights are ready and up here, and we are away in Australia, and it seems to be the McLaren has got away well and is setting off into the distance in the lead. Meanwhile, in the midfield, this seems to be all clean. In the mid-pack, there seems to be a couple of positions swapping, but it seems to be good news for the McLaren, who leads. David Swart has had a very good start, and they seem to have jumped the Haas of Callum into P3. Meanwhile, in the midfield, it all seems to be swooping through rather well, and there doesn't seem to be any major incidents yet, but we're flying through a few cars going a little bit close here into turn 6, but everyone seems to be avoiding that well as RWB 2004 looks for a move on the Ferrari, but it seems to be all business as usual so far. And we will just ensure that all the settings are all in on the right place, which they seem to be. And well, meanwhile, it's all seemed to have gone astray for S95 Dom as Geordie swings one round the outside at turn 11, which is a good start for the Haas. He runs wide, heading out of that right-hander as we end lap 1 with Ollie in the lead. That McLaren driver who put this car on pole has survived the opening lap of the race, and it seems to be all single file in the top end of the field as, well, on board with Geordie in P7, who made that move on the Alpine of S95 Domi round the outside in the final sector. Very nice move before almost running wide and losing the spot. But there seems to be single file. There will obviously be a bit of a DRS train coming up, which will be, well, hopefully we'll have some overtakes and we're not all just going around in single file for 29 laps. Otherwise, there will not be much actually to talk about. And we're seeing here that the RB of RWB is getting very close to the back of the Ferrari of Forest. Meanwhile, out front, the gap just veered to about a tenth and a half, and well, the RB just can't quite get the move done. But the Ferrari has cut the chicane, and he's coming back on track. And well, and he nearly runs into the back of Brent and the Red Bull there, who's going to have a little look at the outside. There was a bit of front wind that have flown off. The Red Bull has run a little bit wide. The Ferrari has managed to renegotiate the pace, but he has lost an end clip, which could be crucial. As well, the midfield certainly bringing the entertainment so far, as they're still scrapping away at the end of lap 2. David Svat seems to be set in the early pace up in front, but Enzo in the Alpine replies with the fastest lap of the race, a 1:19.2 as we start lap 3. Meanwhile, out in front, we have a bit of a scrap for the lead, as Ollie has lost the lead. David Svat has overtake. Apologies. David Svat has taken the lead. Meanwhile, there's the first penalty casualty of the night as Callum picked up a 3-second time penalty for track extending with some, well, certainly some exceeding the track limit to the exit of turn 4. There's a yellow flag at the back. It seems to be Daft Ben, and the Williams have seemed to have collided. Meanwhile, up back up in front, there's Ollie regaining this spot up in front. Meanwhile, in the battle for third, the Mercedes just about clings on as Willow is looking to gain a spot back as where he started in P4, but it seems to be up front is all starting to get a little bit feisty, which is, well, good news for me in the commentary box as we swoop around the final sector at the end of lap 3, and it seems to be all quieting down in the midfield as Ollie has a little bit of a locker on that front left tyre. You'd expect Oh, and there's a little bit of a slide there from David Spratt. That was when I mentioned how strategy of a one-stop could be crucial here, but that back end seemed to be a little bit loose on the exit of the final corner. And this is a good chance for Callum to really maybe even stamp his authority down and get into that P2 spot. Of course, he's got that 3-second time penalty looming around him. There's another lock-up by Ollie. As we have the first retirement of the race, as the Williams has, well, kind of called it a day in the pits in classic league racing fashion, and has decided to pin into the pits to retire the car. Probably the safest thing to do, as Ayati Sabuke in the RB down in P14 picks up a penalty for track limits. Meanwhile, up front, it seemed to have all quietened down, but the good news for the top six, there seems to be a bit of a gap forming. I don't know if the Alpine strategy was to involve a little bit of a gap, but it seems to be S95 Dom is either struggling with tyre pace or tyre wear, track pace and tyre wear, and it seemed to have dropped back a little bit compared to his teammate. Meanwhile, behind, well, there's a little bit of a scrap. RWB 2004 is always involved. It seems to be in the early stages of this race, as well, we swoop around the last couple of corners to end lap 4 and to the beginning of the lap 5. There's Ollie in the lead in his McLaren, hosting a train of cars. And there's a spinner that looked to have been Brent. Yeah, there he went. As a couple of more time penalties come from turn 1 and turn 2, as well, Brent loses the back end at the exit of the final corner. There seems to be a couple of drive errors creeping in everywhere. A couple of penalties coming in for Willow and Enzo now. So that might make the picture a little bit more interesting nearer the end of this Grand Prix, but there's still a long way to go. Early days here at this WR season 21, and it's the console tier 4. My name is Jason Tomlin, and I'm guiding you through this race, and it seems to be system as usual for Ollie up in front, and he seems to have got a little train of about 6 cars. We're on board as Swifty in P8 in the Red Bull, who's behind the man who's created the gap in S95 Dom, who is, well, 2.5 seconds behind his teammate in the Alpine. Meanwhile, RWB having a little sniff with P9 and the Williams in front, but it comes to no avail as we carry on business as usual. Before it all kind of veered out into a bit of back end movement to the final corner, it's predicted to be a one stop. But it's very interesting with tyre wear on this game, as I've struggled with in a league race once or twice already. But tyre wear is always an important factor, and it might even make a 2-stop possible, as Thorisant in the Ferrari picks up a time penalty. Meanwhile, up in front, it seems to be all business as usual, except for the fact that a couple of time penalties have been dished out early on, which are not good for those drivers in the top 6 and their chances of winning the race. But it seems to be the norm, as Sam is looking quite close to the Haas of FC Callum. We go out in front. We're going to go on board with Callum here, because the top 2 are going at it. As David Svat takes the lead on lap 6, he seems to have had the better race pace at the beginning of this. He overtook Ollie earlier on before the McLaren got him back, but it seems to be now that he's claimed that spot for good. Midway through lap 6, a little bit of a snap on the back ends for good measure, but it seems to be that it's looking good for the kick early on. And what can the McLaren throw at the back? They seem to be under the cosh from Ollie. I'd assume he's got enough ERS to stave clear of that, and it's hopeful that he'll either regain that position back. But Callum is looking a little bit racy here going through turn 1, and he's got a chance going down into turn 3. I don't think there is on this occasion. A very tricky manoeuvring spot nowadays. There's a little bit of positional change down in the midfield, as the Ferrari of Florissant as well lost a little bit more of his front wing, I believe, as he seems to have been really struggling in that midfield scrap. And it seems to have all balanced out in the midfield. It's all got a little bit congested up front, which is what we like to see. As Sem in the Mercedes, meanwhile, there's another scrap for the lead here, and it looks like Ollie has regained that spot. Meanwhile, for P3, it looks like Sem has just made the move on that fast left-right chicane, and he's got the position done. And he's up into P3 as the Mercedes. Meanwhile, the McLaren and Willow will be having a little look going down into the right-hander. Oh, very close there. This seems to be Callum just about holding on. He's looking racy at the beginning of the lap, but he seems to have gone against him here as he's, well, fallen down a place down into P4 as the gap up front starts to widen, but there seems to be a little bit of congestion in the midfield as the gap between the two Alpines have shrunk by about 0.3 of a second over recent laps. That could be down to a bit of squabbling involving the top drivers, but there's something to keep an eye on to kind of get this mini DRS train up front with the, well, kind of 3 different DRS trains now. There's the entire grid as the 2 drivers are pitted early for wing changes, including the Ferrari Florissant, who had a little moment with a couple of other cars earlier on, plus Brent in the Red Bull had a little spin for the exit of the final corner, and Dark Ben was, I believe, involved in some early incidents. Meanwhile, at the front, the switch in between the kick and the McLaren continues as David Svat retakes the lead on lap 8 here at Albert Park, and it seems to be these two are justing it out up front in the early stages, and well, it's good to see, but he's not had the best of exits there. Going through that right-hander, very tricky right-hander now. There seems to be that curve on the inside can always catch you out, but there's an even more lethal curve on the outside which catches you out if you're not careful. So will there be anything going down the back straight? Of course, ERS deployment is key round here as we start lap 9 out of 29 here at Albert Park. There seems to be a bit of a spinner, yet the Williams of Vano Rundi, sorry, apologies for my mispronunciation, has caused a VSC or a safety car, and the other flag caution is kind of in the way of what's really come out. So, well, ideal situation for Geordie in the Aston Martin, who could just peel into the pit as nobody's business. But it seems to be a full safety car. You can see the yellow dot on the exit of turn 2, so that neutralises the race a little bit. After, well, 8 or so laps of racing action, it's unfortunate for the Williams constructor with both cars out early on the opening race of the season. Not the start of the season they would have wanted, but very disappointing. The last corner always catches you up nowadays. It seems that you can put quite a lot of power into it, and in terms of corner speed, but the exit sometimes always catches you out. As it'll be interesting to see what happens with the tyre graphics. Of course, the majority of the field started on the medium tyre. Well, the top 11 are all currently on that same set of tyres, and of course there've been some pit stops behind as well. Most recently Geordie, who pitted on this lap. So it'll be interesting to see what type of tyres the drivers go on. Do some go early for a set of hards? Do some opt for a set of mediums? And a few of them come into the pits here. So the leaders are all coming in. I think it's the best time to change tyres as the top 6, well, the top 7 all kind of swift in. It seems to be there's going to be some pit stop drama here. On board with the kick, who's going to set a set of hard tyres on. So do the majority, well, the entirety of the top 5 for now. And it seems to be the call, medium to hard, with the safety car being deployed. So it will be intriguing to see, can they keep that hard compound tyre going for the remaining laps? Of course, still a long way to go. Only lap 10 out of 29. Of course, there might be the odd lap or two under safety car condition where they'd be able to harvest tyres. Obviously, tyres get quite quickly on the F125 game, and it could play into the fact that's a very nice shot of the safety car through turn 5. Actually, could play a nice effect of the 2-stop could come into play, especially if there's a late safety car later on in the closing stages. But for now, it's lap 10. David Swat is in the lead after starting the race in P3. He overtook the Haas of Callum on the opening lap, and he has been squabbling away with the man in second place, which is Ollie in the McLaren. 7F1 is a tidy race. He is up into P3, whilst Callum, despite the front row start, has dropped down a couple of spots into P4. Meanwhile, the pit stops didn't really help out the second McLaren of Willows drop into P6 as Enzo has overtaken him in the Alpine Renault RWB, who's been quite one of the busiest drivers really in terms of battles in P7 with RT Chopper F1 in P8 before the second Alpine of S95 Dome and swiftly rounding out the top 10. So a bit of a chance for me to catch my breath after what has been quite a busy opening few laps as the safety car just paces itself around in, usual fashion. And obviously the safety car's going as fast as it can, but for modern day Formula One standards, it doesn't really go very quickly. As you're waiting for the entire tail to catch up, there's 15 drivers remaining. Both Williams cars out seems to be the main talking point of the race so far. So it seems to be the norm. And thank you all for joining us. I should say, may as well give a shout out to the old sponsors on WOR. So Grid Finder, where you are. So of course, if you're looking to join a league or just to join any sort of race, Grid Finder is where to go. And you can kind of source out your league, source out drivers, commentators to commentate and to stream races such as this, and to general to kind of have a community feel. And of course, the next level racing. If you want some sim racing equipment, that seems to be the place to go. Unfortunately, I can't say I've tried and tested it, but it seems to be, from a lot of people, a very handy place to go. And so midway through lap 11 out of 29 of the opening race of the WR season, tier 4 on the console side of things. Of course, there are many other races going on, but this race is about to resume on the end of lap 11 with the safety car peeling into the pits at the end of this lap. And we're on board with the kick of David Svat, who will be leading us away on the restart. We'll be hoping for a bit of, just a good launch and to stay clear of the chasing pack as he waits his time. He's going to go the exit of the final corner as the kick gets us back underway. Meanwhile, you're not allowed to overtake until the safety car, the start-finish straight is currently in real life. I can't remember if that's changed or not in this video game. I believe it is. Meanwhile, up in front, the top two seem to have staved the way. Meanwhile, Stem has not had a particularly great restart. He's under pressure from Callum in the Haas. Well, good news for Sam. Three of the drivers going involved at the time down. Meanwhile, in the midfield, Geordie and Swifty are going at it, and the Aston Martin and the Red Bull, but we seem to have all survived pretty well. There doesn't seem to be many incidences so far as we swoop through the middle sector of the lap. As seems to be that drivers will want to get a bit of an edge early on here, as battery deployment is always useful on restarts, and it seems to be that the kick out front has seemed to have done a good job. They had a slight twitch on exit, which could give Ollie a little bit more breathing space. And it all seems to be single file for now as we enter and exit turn 11. But it's certainly an interesting dynamic to this race from that safety car. Finally coming at a time where the medium tyres would be running out of its sell-by date as we exit the final corner to end lap 12 and start lap 13. It is all the same from the safety car restart up front as you're on board with Enzo in the Aston Martin, as Geordie in the Alpine, as Geordie in the Aston Martin picked up a 3-second time penalty for exceeding track limits. As we're kind of reaching the halfway point and we're still quite congested up, obviously thanks to that safety car. This seems to be the theme of the race, particularly up front. I wonder if the gap that we saw early on will reappear with the top six. Meanwhile, up in front seems to be a bit of a gap forming, but Ollie and the McLaren will pick up the RS as he will, hopefully might have a little look to the inside. He goes and he will get the move done with ease. Doesn't seem to be much competition there from the kick of David, and it seems to be another switch in the battle for the lead as Ollie reclaims that lead that he had by putting the car on pole in qualifying, and it seems to be a regular theme in this race. Meanwhile, behind Willow and Enzo in the McLaren, the Aston Martin, and the Alpine, and mixing those two constructors up, they seem to be going at it, but it seems to have all quietened down now rather typically once we go on board with them. But it seems to have kind of kept everyone in this DRS train earlier on, so you've got to be wary of any overtakes. As on board with Callum, one of the few drivers now that have picked up time penalties. Will you have a little look at the Mercedes Sam in front of him? No, he will not. There seems to be a little bit of a gap brewing between Enzo and RWB in the Alpine and the RB as Callum runs out the line. Meanwhile, up in front, the gap has really closed down between the leaders as David looks to try and set up a move, heading down into the middle DRS zone as he opens the DRS. And it looks like he will get this done with ease. He was arguably in front before he even opened the DRS, and he will get the move done into the lead for the countless times that those two have switched positions. And it seems to be a little bit, certainly a better exit and a better lap for David this time, as IRT Suzuki is the first driver to pick up 2 time penalties this race on lap 14. And the kick takes the lead in the midway through, and as we're about to reach halfway of this race, and it seems to be all quieting down for now. There's a bit of a gap between second and third as Sam is just about holding on from the 2 cars behind, as it seems to be business as usual, and that gap could play a bit of a factor later on. I hope for the Mercedes sake that he can kind of close that gap down and remain in the hunt for the race win, but it seems to be that the top 2 are going ahead with it, and so the gap has kind of naturally closed back down, and we'll go close again, hopefully with a bit of DRS later on this lap. Willow seems to be the closest one, but meanwhile up in front there seems to be a bit of cat and mouse with the leaders. These 2 are constantly switching. Will Ollie go for it again? He'll go to the inside. And, yet again, that seems to be the popular overtaking spot at the moment up front. And will the kick have anything in return? He will stay behind for now, I believe, as Geordie picks up another 3-second time penalty in the Aston Martin P10, which could complicate things. But the constant switching of the top 2 seems to be keeping an eye on things, as something has seemed to have happened to Geordie, as it looks like he's lost out on a few spots and a couple of positions, as obviously a little bit of a mistake in the final sector. Up front is still the top 2 seemingly just about having enough of an edge compared to the rest of the field, and Geordie does call it a day with the sensible option of going into the pit and retiring the car. Doesn't seem to have much fun out there with the Aston Martin with those time penalties and now a retirement. But there seems to be a little bit of a gap in between P9 and P10. If those of you who are looking at the DRS trains, and there seems to be a bit of a gap up front. Meanwhile, there's going to be another switch for the lead as David Stratt regains the lead in his kick, but Sam is a lot closer this time around. Can he make it a three-way scrap for the lead? As it was a brief dead off back in second one, but that's because of the retired car in the pit. But it doesn't seem to be materialising just yet for the Mercedes driver, but he's a lot closer than what he was a couple of laps ago, which should give him a bit of confidence in the latter stages of this race. Meanwhile, Willow has seemed to have overtaken Callum in the second McLaren, so there'll be some work to do for the Haas if he wants to regain P4 as we start lap 17 out of 29 here in the Tier 4 console league of WOR, as Callum just about looks to hold on and look to regain that spot back from the second McLaren of Willow. Obviously a very good day for McLaren in the constructors. Of course, with WOR, this seems to be the same points row as real life Formula 1, so usual 25 points for a race win, 18 for second, 15 for third, and obviously points row when you're down to 10th place, as Willow seem to have got bit close, but it seems to have drifted away, possibly down to a bit of usage of the old DRS. Meanwhile, up in front, yes, there's another move for the lead. Ollie regains that spot. These two are constantly switching at the moment, which, well, it kind of seems like when there should be a permanent camera heading into the entry of that chicane, because whenever those two are driving by, there's always an overtake. Ollie regains the lead. This battle will go down to the last lap, so stay tuned. Get your friends, possibly some food, some popcorn, whatever you fancy, and stick around for that scrap for the lead, because that should get tasty as we enter the latter stages, especially on hard tyres that have been ran since the end of lap 10. So tyre wear might be coming into play sooner rather than later. Of course, traditionally in a 50% race in Australia, the one stop doesn't happen until a few laps later than lap 10, even around lap 13, 14, something like that, to make the switch onto the hard compound tyre. But they have to pit a little bit earlier due to a safety car following the retirement of Vano Rundi in the Williams. Not a good day for the Williams constructor, as there seems to be some switching going on at the back. Switching going on in the backfield between Dark Ben and Florissant in the Haas number 5 of P13. Meanwhile, is there going to be an overtake this lap? It doesn't seem to be, which is a rarity, as the kick just stays behind the McLaren for now, whilst there's a little bit of a scrap. But there we go. It wasn't the chicane, it was the exit of the chicane, which what the kick used to good effect, and he swoops around the outside in a relatively routine move. Those are not routine moves going around there into the final sector, but he's back in the lead at the end of lap 18, going to the start of lap 19, and they seem to have all been closing up quite well. Of course, penalties will play a factor, track limit warnings will play a factor, and there seems to be a disconnect from Brent there in the Red Bull, as Enzo Max picks up a second time penalty. That can send him tumbling down the order in the latter stages here at Albert Park, whilst the scrap for the lead is still brewing. There's only two drivers that have led so far today, and that is the McLaren of Oliver and the kick of David Svat. So there's not much time left for anyone else to join the party. Up front, the closest one has been the Mercedes' Sam. We've got very close a few laps to go to potentially claiming the lead, and the McLaren will go for it again, this time to the outside, and he just about gets the move done. Will David Svat keep that P2 spot though? He will be under a bit of pressure, and Sam will have that DRS going down the back straight into turn 12. He has a little look, but he doesn't quite commit to the move, and he stays in P3 for now, as Florissant in the Ferrari in P13 picks up a time penalty. It's a little bit of a lock-up from a race leader, but he seems to have not affected him that much, as he's pulled a bit of a gap here to around 0.7 of a second, which is rather useful. And this seems to be a bit of a spinner, and it is Callum who has spun it at the exit of the final corner. That's no good for the Haas, who started on the front row of the grid and is now tumbled outside of the points after, a race where he had lost a couple of positions early on. But that spin at the exit of the final corner, which has caught a couple of drivers here tonight, has seemed to have paid dividends of his chances of any grandstand finish for a podium, or possibly a race win. Up in front, the gap has been reduced by a couple of tenths, less than half a second as well. Florissant's night is getting even worse. He picked up a 10-second time penalty, and he's retired the car. Meanwhile, David Svat is about to go round the outside to take the lead again here at Albert Park. There seems to be a lot of switching going on, and there's a bit more of a battle further on down the field between IRT Sabuka and Swifty. A few drivers in that midfield pack have picked up penalties, which could play a lot of a factor in the points, in terms of the final couple of points. But then Brent in the second Red Bull seems to be a little bit too far behind to be playing ball there. But on board with the kick, who leads as we end lap 20, going on to lap 21, and it looks like a McLaren sandwich with a Mercedes filling. Can Sam do anything to get past this McLaren? He seems to have been stuck behind him for the top two for the entirety of this race, as we get very close going down into turn 3. But the overtaking spot is before the chicane, which is something that they've always kind of targeted, well, particularly the top two have, as we go round into the middle sector again. Will there be another move? Will Ollie go for it this time? He's saved up his ERS. It's always a game of cat and mouse with the ERS percentages. And it looks like he's going to go for the outside yet again. That's the second or third time he's done it. He's done that with a bit more ease this time. Can Sem join the party is the important question. And what are the drivers like in terms of track limit warnings? Could be crucial, as Swifty there picks up a 3-second time penalty and IRT Suzuka. Both of those have picked up multiple penalties in this race as we enter the final sector of lap 21 with a change of lead with Ollie and leading again a little bit of a lock-up going into that penultimate corner. But it seems to have doesn't really affect him that much, which is, well, good news for the McLaren at least, as we start lap 22. Not many laps left here at Albert Park, and it seems to be a bit of time where tyre wear might play into things, particularly with 12-lap-old hard compound tyres that have been put on since the end of lap 10 when we had an early safety car, and it seems to be that whoever's kept their tyres in check might be in a very good spot here, and we're not sure what it's like for the top two so far as we enter the middle chicane again. Will there be another overtake for the lead? Meanwhile, behind, I believe that is Brent in the Red Bull, who seemed to have lost it at the exit of turn 4, which doesn't. Oh no, it's the other Red Bull. Apologies, of Swifty that seemed to have lost it at the exit of turn 4. Up in front, that looked like a track limit warning for David there, as he looks to open the DRS and get the move done to the outside, and he gets the move done heading into the right-hander, which could, well, they'll give him the lead for now, but Ollie's so good at getting that run going down into the chicane. It seems to be that that's not going to be the final overtake for the race lead here tonight, as David swoops around the final corner to end lap 22 and start lap 23. And well, he's comfortably out in front. There seems to be not much jostling outside of that. There's a bit of a gap formed outside of the top 6. So all credit to RWB 2004, who started this race in the midfield and has seemed to have crept up well into a top 6 spot. But it seems to always be the old DRS trains. Will they come to life, as you've seen in previous F1 games, or will we just have a foregone conclusion where they might just only be the odd overtake here and there? Now, will Oliver go for the lead again? He'll have DRS, he's burning his ERS, and he will go to the inside this time. It was the outside last time, was the inside this time, as he gets the move done with ease. Don't think there's much fight put up by David there. He knows there's a few more laps left, as there's a crucial penalty for David Svat, who has, well, been cutting a little bit too many corners, and that will be his third warning, which results in a time penalty, which could send him off the podium, which is not an ideal thing to say about the kick driver as we enter the last few laps. Well, they could just about maybe have a little bit of breathing space with that penalty, but if David loses out to Sem will really fancy his chances. We start lap 24. The McLaren leads. The man who was on pole, the only driver in the woman in 14s here in Tier 4, seemed to have had the edge over everyone in qualifying. Over a quarter of a second he was on pole by, but this race has certainly been something different, mainly because of the threat of the kick by David Svat, who has been jostling it out with him for the entirety, multiple overtakes for the lead, and just that last lap picking up a time penalty, which could be costly as we enter the middle section of the racetrack again. There seems to be a little bit of a gap as we're on board with Sem in the Mercedes. When he have a little look to the outside or the inside, he will stay in the slipstream and not quite force a move. It could give either one of them a run on the McLaren, but Sem just doesn't quite get the exit. A little bit of dirty air playing into effect as the kick just has a little look at the McLaren, but doesn't really want to go for a risky move and potentially ruin Grand Prix. And they stay in single file for now. As Sem has a little bit of a moment going into Pulp corner, a snap of understeer included with a lock-up, which meant he had a little bit of a half spin, a bit of a rear lock-in situation there. As we start lap 25, this gap's roughly around 4.5 tenths. Will there be a late change for the lead, or will it be Ollie converting the pole position to a race win? And well, it seems to be that that's the case with that David Svat time penalty of 3 seconds coming a couple of laps ago. It seems to have paid big dividends in the end of this race, and it will pay a big effect that a couple of drivers behind, like Willow and Enzo, have put the penalties as well. And I think if David's best bet for a good result here is to get out in the lead and pull away as much as he can in the remaining few laps. But it's one thing to take the lead, it's another thing to kind of really pull away. Oh, I look like a bit track limits to me. Going through that chicane, so easy to cut that right hand of the second part of the chicane as you think, oh, you've done the first bit right, so you can take a little bit more leeway. But no, you can still cut that very easily. As Ollie still maintaining that gap as the train continues to form. We even got IRT Tropic F1 in the Aston Martin, who's kind of tagged along to the back of this as we enter lap 26 out of 29. Not long to go here at Albert Park, as well, the battle for the lead continues. The top two have been going at it for the entirety of the race. For those who haven't been watching, you missed out on a bit of a scrap, a bit of a battle, and around this straight circuit, and we're entering its final closing stages shortly. But that penalty, as it's gone on so many countless times by David Svat, might pay dividends late on, as well, we're going to reach a DRS soon. This has been the hot spot for overtaking in this race, but I think he's a little bit too far behind. This seems to be the case for a few drivers now. Maybe Dirty Air kicking into play, as RWB seems to be the closest driver for making a move. Can he get a mistake out of Enzo as we enter the final closing stages? The lead closes down to 3 tenths as Sabuka, one of his faults as this race has been track limits, and there's another penalty to go for the mix. Meanwhile, Willow is all over the back as there might have been a little error there in the final sector as we round out lap 26 to start lap 27. This certainly is the closest scrap for now, as Sem has dropped out of DRS and should be a sitting duck, and Willow could make it a double McLaren podium here with a move down the back straight. Of course he's got that penalty, which will be dealt with later on, but that's not a good lap for Sem in the Mercedes, who's looking comfortable in third, but it doesn't seem to be the case. He's dropped out of DRS from the top two, as Willow seems to have a little bit of a slide going through turn 3. Those Brits are not happy with what he was trying to do, and well, there seems to be a bit of a gap for David Svat now, which is good for him and his 3-second time penalty, which could play dividends. Of course, a few drivers in the top 6, including Willow and Enzo, have got penalties. Sem hasn't, so you'd be hoping for his sake he will reclaim a podium. Back up in front, is there going to be a move for a lead? I don't think there is, as the top 2 file across the fast swooping left-right chicane as Willow holds on, but he's 1.6 seconds behind. This has comfortably been the biggest gap between the lead and pack this race. It seems to be now that there's going to be 2 different races formed in the final 2 laps coming up, as the gap between the top 2 is extending further and further, and we will hope to see hopefully a little bit more action as the leaders start lap 28 out of 29. These are the closing stages here at WOR season 21, the opening race of the Console Tier 4 season. I'm guessing Thomas, and my voice is about to go. I've been doing this on my own for the majority of the evening, and hopefully we can have a stress-free closing, hopefully no dramatics, as there seems to be a gap forming up in front. Has Ollie done enough to persevere a lead, which will be good enough for him to convert his pole to victory? The gap's over 7 tenths. That's quite a big gap, and he seems to have the advantage in terms of battery as well, but David will have DRS. Meanwhile, Sem is going for a move on Willow for P3, which sticks. That is big for him as he'll ensure a podium spot and he'll look to close that gap down and potentially claim P2 in the latter stages. The gap was just ticked over 2 seconds there, but now it's back down to 1.7. Out front, Ollie's still in the lead. Meanwhile, in the rest of the midfield, the train has formed down to IRT Tropic in P7, but there's a little scrap going on between an RA and an Alpine for P9. Meanwhile, Brent seems to have consolidated that final 10th place for one World Championship point. Meanwhile, out in front, that seems to be the lapped car of Dark Ben seemingly getting in the way on the final lap, which could add a little bit of confusion for all involved. And there seems to be gaps forming now. Willow could be under pressure from the Alpine of Enzo. This would be a straight swap position as Willow snaps on exit at the exit of turn 3. Seemingly struggling for grip out there. Of course, those tyres have been on for quite some time now, as we're on board with the Alpine looking to gain a late move. He's within 2.5 tenths. We've still got RWB, who is on for a very good point finish here in his wings. And it doesn't seem to be close enough for a move on this final lap, which is a bit of a shame and borderline anticlimactic, but that's the way it goes sometimes. Meanwhile, out in front, it has been a very, very good race for the top two. David Strat started in third, overtook Oliver FG Callum very early on, and been a constant thorn into Ollie's race by multiple overtakings. But it's going to be the McLaren driver who swoops around the final corner to claim victory here on the first day of WR Tier 4 for the consoles. And he will take the race lead with Sam overtaking David Strat due to penalties by just over 3.5 tenths. Meanwhile, RWB, my contender for driver of the day, if I had an opinion on it, swoops around the claim P4 due to time penalties, with IRT Tropic in the Aston Martin runner at the top 5. Willow, quite a good race in that second. McLaren was in third briefly, finishes in P6, whilst Enzo is in P7, followed by his teammate S95 Dong in P8. IRT Sabuka crosses the line in P5, whilst the final points go to Red Bull, and Brent 1404 claims out P4. FG Callum, a vital mistake midway through the race with a spin. Saw his very good qualifying kind of being diminished, while Swifty and Dark Ben were the final finishers in 12th and 13th. 4 retirements, including Florissant in the Ferrari, and the 2 Williams drivers, as well as DRA Geordie in the Aston Martin. Quite an exciting season opener. A lot of battles, a lot of overtaking, particularly up front, and quite an evenly bunched field. As well, the driver celebrations continue here at Albert Park, and it's seemingly a very good race here in Albert Park. Of course, so many times in real life you've seen it as a season opener. As the champagne is sprayed, a kick on the podium. Where have we seen that before? And well, there we are. That is the end of the opening round of Tier 4 for the consoles on World Online Racing. And I will just quickly run through the classifications. So it was Ollie in the McLaren who converted his pole to win. Sam in P2. David Strapp, that crucial penalty missing out. RWB from 12th to 4th. IRT Tropic from 14th to 5th. 2 very solid drives. Then there was the penalties of Willow and Enzo, which sent them out to the top 5. S95 Dommy in P8. IRT Sabuka in P9. And the Red Bull of Brent round out the points. Callum didn't really convert his front row start to anything good in P11. Swifty, Dark Ben, and I've forgotten the name of the other driver. I think that was the lot of them in terms of the classified results alongside the 4 retirements. Now, I would invite drivers onto some interviews, but my voice is teetering on edge. So I'm sure the admin and the coordinating team will allow me a week off on the interviews But they will be back next week as we depart Albert Park, of course, for the season opener, and we head to Barcelona, Catalonia, for the Spanish Grand Prix next week. Thank you all for tuning in. My name's been Yastin Thomas. You can check me out on social medias if you want. I'm out and about, particularly predominant on X and Blue Sky. If you're into your rugby union, then you can follow me there. And thank you very much for watching.